If you can't control your emotions, you will most certainly not be in control of your life, because emotions are very powerful. Emotions dictate the course of our lives. They dictate the state of our health, wealth, happiness, our level of connection. Our emotions can interfere with so many things, but they can also push us forward. If we're able to generate positive emotions in our lives, we'll be able to better drive ourselves forward with excitement, passion, drive. Emotions are that kind of thing. It's either going to make you or it's going to break you. So you want to develop some competence and expertise in them. And as a clinical psychologist who sees people in my private practice on a daily basis, emotions is something that's extremely central to almost every case that I have. It's one of those things that are really difficult to ignore, especially as a therapist, right? So let's speak a bit about how to control emotions. If you really want to control your emotions, you need to understand two things. Firstly, you need to understand how to deal with intense emotions when they arise in the moment. And secondly, you want to learn how to decrease certain emotions over time. How do you actually, if you're feeling really depressed or anxious a lot of your life, how do you actually decrease that over time? How do you get to a better emotional space? How do you increase your well-being over time? How do you tip the scale on those positive versus negative emotions and feel better over time? Psychologists love to say things like, you just have to accept your emotions, emotions are part of life, emotions are very human, and things like that. But if that were the case, ultimately, why do people bother coming to therapy? I mean, we can tell people that their lives are exactly as it should be and just let them stay at home. I think therapy needs to be a place where over time, we actually do start to feel better. We do start to tip the scale in terms of our emotions and how we're feeling on a daily basis, increasing our well-being, decreasing our suffering. And a big part of that is knowing how to control emotions. So let's come back to those two things that I said you have to understand. Firstly, how to downregulate intense emotions in the moment. So when you're feeling some sort of emotion that's very intense and maybe is lasting for a long time and you want to decrease it, then you need to turn to emotion regulation strategies, which is basically the psychological term for knowing how to dial down emotions. It can also mean knowing how to dial up emotions, but I think what's relevant here is knowing how to dial it down, those really negative, intense emotions. So the first thing you need to realize is that when you're feeling really strong, intense emotions, your nervous system is hyper aroused. It's hyper activated. In particular, it's the stress response that's hyper activated, because that stress response is actually what creates the negative feeling in the emotion, that negative valence. So your underlying physiology is hyper activated. So a really useful way to decrease the emotions is to decrease that foundational base that's hyper activated, that physiological survival system that is really skyrocketed in that moment. Once you do that, all the other intense negative emotions will automatically start to come down. There are two ways that I think you can really hack that system in the moment. One way is through paced breathing. So you can do that really simply by just saying, I'm going to breathe in for 4 counts and then breathe out for 6 counts. You want the in-breath to be shorter than the out-breath, because the out-breath is actually what slows down our heart rate and brings us into a calmer state. The out-breath is more responsible for putting us in rest and digest rather than fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. So the first thing that you can do to downregulate really intense emotions is to control your breathing. Practice it on a daily basis. I would recommend 5 minutes a day. I think the therapists who practice polyvagal theory, which is a really powerful kind of therapy, they recommend doing 4 counts in, 6 counts out, and doing that for 5 minutes a day. If you do that for a week, then after that week, you can do it for 10 minutes. After that week, you can do it for 15 minutes. And then by week 4, you can do it for 20 minutes. And then 20 minutes is a good baseline for daily practice. I promise you that if you do that on a daily basis, you'll get better at using your breathing to downregulate your emotions. That is a really quick and effective way to downregulate intense emotions. So you want to get that daily practice going of 4 seconds in, 6 seconds out, and build it up to 20 minutes over 4 weeks. But then you want to learn how to use it in the moment. So when you start to feel your anxiety level increase, extreme sadness, overwhelm, grief, trauma, panic, whatever it is, try to implement that strategy in the moment. You don't have to do it for a specific amount of time. Just make sure you do it for at least 2 minutes. And you will certainly, after 2 minutes, feel it start to impact your emotions. Maybe it won't get rid of it entirely, but it will help you decrease the level of intensity over time. So that is the first quick way to downregulate intense emotions. The second quick way to do that, to downregulate really intense emotions and better control your emotions, is by using grounding exercises. So these don't use the breathing system primarily as a means to downregulate those emotions. These use your sensory systems. So they use your ability for sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, to be able to ground yourself again. The theory says that if we're focusing on our senses, it's a bit more difficult to focus on the emotions. And when we're not focusing on the emotion, we're not adding fuel to the fire. So it's almost like by allowing ourselves to tune into our senses, we pull out of the emotion into the world, and the emotion slowly starts to subside. We stop feeding the emotion because we're not paying too much attention to it. We're not focusing on it and thus multiplying it, right? So that's the second way to do it. And practically how you can do that is by noticing 5 things in the room that you can see. So you look around. Right now I can see a mirror, I see a light, I see a camera, I see a water bottle, I see a laptop. So you do that. 5 things you can notice. Then you notice 4 things that you can hear. So right now I hear forks and knives. I hear my own voice. I can hear my chair a bit, and then I hear some footsteps as well. So I tune into those 4 things and I hear it for a bit and try to be present with them. After noticing the 4 things, then you can touch 3 things. So I can touch the fabric on my shirt, I can touch my hair, I can feel that, I can touch the desk. But as you're doing it, you pay attention again, you be present, just really feel it. You don't have to think here. You're grounding yourself in senses. So immerse yourself in the senses. So now I've touched 3 things. Then you want to try and smell 2 things. You can even bring objects closer. You know, if I can smell this phone case. I can smell the mic. They smell fine, by the way, if you're wondering. So you smell 2 things and use that to ground yourself. And then you want to notice if you can taste anything in your mouth. So even if you don't taste anything, just paying attention to that area of your mouth and the sensations there. And after you've done that, congratulations, you have walked through your 5 senses. 5 things you can see, 4 things you can hear, 3 things you can touch, 2 things you can smell, and then 1 thing you can taste. In terms of taste, you can even put something in your mouth if you have something around. But anyways, once you walk through those 5 senses, you will again for sure feel a lot less emotionally engaged, especially if you truly allowed yourself to immerse yourself in the senses. That will short circuit the emotional process, it will stop it from escalating, and it will help you feel better in the moment. So those are 2 ways to downregulate really intense emotions in the moment. But remember, that's just the first pillar of learning how to control your emotions, because it's not good enough to just know how to keep downregulating intense emotions, but to keep having those spikes occur. We don't want to just learn how to cope with these emotions that are constantly coming up. We don't want to just have to constantly be battling them, having these little wars throughout a daily basis, a weekly basis, every year. We want those emotions to decline over time so that we don't have to downregulate them constantly. We want them not to even occur in the first place. And I think when it comes to controlling emotions, I think that's the ultimate, that's the end point. If you can do that, then your life will feel a lot better, because how your life feels is determined by your feelings. What feelings are most present in your life? And so I think the thing that I want to mention in terms of controlling your emotions over time is that you first have to be aware of them. Because if you're not aware of your emotions, then you're not aware of the concern that's rooted in them, and thus the need that you have. Because whenever we feel emotions, something you have to understand about emotions is that whenever we feel them, it's indicating a need that we have. That's how feelings work in general. If you have any feeling, even if it's not an emotional feeling, let's talk about bodily feelings for a moment. If you have the feeling of being hungry, then that is communicating that you need some food. It's communicating a need. If you have the feeling that you're thirsty, if you're feeling thirsty, it's communicating a need. You need water. Now, if I weren't able to feel hunger and I weren't able to feel thirst, then I would not be well equipped to be able to meet my needs. I would not be well equipped to meet my bodily needs because I'm not in touch with my bodily feelings. And the problem is a lot of people understand that on a physical bodily level, but they don't understand that when it comes to emotional feelings. Because emotional feelings too communicate needs. If you feel lonely, guess what it's communicating? You need some social connection. If you feel sad, it's communicating that you miss something that you might have lost or that's no longer present. If you feel, let's go with angry. If you feel angry, it's communicating the fact that you feel that something's unfair and that there's a need for a boundary and there's a need for some protection. If you're feeling anxious, that could be communicating that there's a future-related problem that you haven't solved. It could be communicating a need for safety or to deal with some threat. Now, these emotional feelings work in the same way as the bodily feelings. You have to tap into them, you have to tune into them, you have to feel them so that you know what need they're communicating. And I say feel them because you can only get to the need if you feel it. You process an emotion by feeling it. A lot of people try to understand their emotions up here. They think about them. If they're feeling some sort of discomfort, they think, I'm feeling discomfort. What could be causing that? What are the consequences of feeling this? And then they speculate. They deliberate. They go into thinking. They're trying to think their way to feelings. But the way to really get in touch with the feeling is not to speculate. It's to feel it. Once you feel it, that feeling will take you somewhere. There are many times in therapy where if a client has some sort of feeling, I'll stop them and I'll be like, whoa, hold on. Let's make space for the emotion. Okay, no thinking, nothing to do right now. Just take a moment in time, a bit of space, and feel whatever's coming up. And then when they feel it, when they just take a deep breath and they just tap into that feeling, wherever it is in their body, it's a bit of pain here in my chest. I ask them, what is that sensation wanting to communicate? Like if that feeling could say something, what would it say? And then they often are able to say something like, screw this. It would say, screw this. Or it would say, I feel so alone. Or it would say, ugh. Or it would say, I'm tired. I'm so tired. And once they say that, then we get closer to their need. Oh, it's saying I'm tired. It's saying I'm tired. It's saying I'm unsupported. I feel alone. All of those things point to needs. If you feel alone, you need some connection. If you feel unsupported, you need support. If you feel tired, you need rest. But you see, you're only able to decipher that if you're brave enough to feel it. And a lot of people are avoiding our emotions. We're avoiding our emotions at the cost of understanding our needs. We're avoiding feeling at the cost of getting what we need. So when it comes to controlling your emotions over time, when it comes to getting rid of these negative emotions over time, you have to learn how to fulfill the need that they are knocking at your door for. Because if you have anxiety knocking, hello. If you have sadness knocking, loneliness, it's knocking and it's saying, hey man, I need something. I need something. And we're not willing to feel, therefore we're not willing to answer the call to meet that need. There are many times where I have clients where if they're feeling angry and I allow them to tap into that anger, we can get closer to what they're trying to protect and what boundary they need to set to make things more fair. And once they set that boundary, once they feel a bit safer, the anger dissipates. It dissipates because it's no longer needed. It's like an alarm system. And once you put in the code, the alarm switches off, the sound stops. Once there's no danger in, the alarm stops because the alarm is no longer needed. The alarm alerted you to the danger and you heard the danger, and then it's okay to switch the alarm off. Emotions work in a very similar way. It's not to say that you'll get rid of it forever, but it will at least definitely increase the intensity of the emotion over time, because you're starting to meet the need, you're starting to listen to it, you're not just dismissing it. So that is the second pillar. That is how you decrease negative emotions over time. You have to be willing to be aware of them, to identify them, to feel them, to identify the need within them, and then to meet that need. That is when the alarm system will stop ringing. And once you know how to do that, decrease them over time, and you know how to cope with intense emotions in the moment through breathing and through grounding exercises, then you will have learned to better control your emotions.